Today we'll show you how to solder 18650 battery cells together to make a custom-made battery pack. Soldering things together is not really a hard thing. However, it's easier said than done, especially when you're trying to solder these batteries together. There are a couple reasons why soldering these 18650 batteries are more challenging than a regular soldering job. These are batteries, so they are very sensitive to heat. So you want to minimize heat exposure to these batteries as much as possible. That means your soldering tip has to spend little time touching the battery as possible. At the same time, it has to make a perfect solder connection or your connection will become loose. And with a loose connection, your battery would become useless. So first things first, you need to have the right tools and equipment. Your soldering iron has to be hot enough to provide the heat. This one I have here is a well of 50-watt soldering iron. What I find is usually around 800 to 850 degrees Fahrenheit is the best. It has to be hot enough so you can spend as little time as possible while at the same time provide a perfect solder connection. If your soldering iron is not hot enough, you're going to spend more time on the battery and it will heat up the battery too much and too long. Also, your choice of soldering tip is also important. I used to use this smaller tip and it worked, but not as efficient because I still have to spend a good amount of time trying to heat up the surface to be hot enough. So with this bigger tip, you can see it's quite bigger, so it can produce a lot more surface area, surface contact area, and therefore it is more efficient of spreading the heat out. The second most important thing is you need to have soldering flux. What I have here is a rosin liquid flux. I just use a screwdriver and spread a thin layer of flux on top of the battery where I'm going to solder. You need to spread it out big enough. The size of the spread is dictated by the size of the wire you're going to use. In this case, my wire is this size, so I need to spread a blob at least bigger than my wire. You don't need much flux, just a thin layer is enough. Too much flux will create a lot of harmful vapor and that you don't want to inhale, and also it's going to make a big mess. The third thing is the wire. What I find best for this application is this wire. These are called tapping wire. They're made of tin and have lead solder layer on top, so it will make your soldering job a lot easier. They are used for making solar panel. They are very easy to work on, and so I can spend very little time on heating up the battery. Another thing is they are flat, so your custom-made battery pack wouldn't be sticking out too much. Now let's talk about the batteries. We have a positive and a negative terminal on the battery. The positive terminal is just a small piece of metal on the top. Therefore, it is easier to heat up and you can apply solder very quickly. However, the negative terminal is a lot harder to work on. That's because the negative terminal is also the outer case of the battery. So as you can see here, the entire outer metal casing is the negative terminal. So when you heat it up, the entire battery is heated up, not just this part. So the outer case acts as a heat sink and transfers all of the heat away from the soldering spot. Therefore, you will have to apply a lot more heat and longer time than the positive terminal. This is the reason why the hotter soldering iron and the bigger soldering tip are better for this application. Alright, it's time to solder. I need to solder 5 of these in parallel. Okay. Got my flux here. Just put a thin layer on it. And spread it out a little bit. Make sure it's the blob is bigger than the size of your wire. Okay. Right, I'm ready to solder. I've set my soldering station to 800 degrees Fahrenheit, almost to maximum. Now need to put solder on it first. Okay. You can see that the positive terminal is easy to heat up, and therefore it's very fast to take in the solder. Fast and easy. You see here a lot of fumes is being produced. The fumes come from the burning of the flux. If you put too much flux, there's going to be a lot of fume. You don't want to inhale this. I don't want to inhale this. Alright, so next, got my wire ready. I'm going to have to hold it down with a pair of pliers because it's going to get really hot. That's it. And a little bit on this side just for the stick on. So now my hands can be free. Now I can put more solder, a little bit more solder on it. Alright, the reason why I put solder, more solder on it, give you close up here, is to not only have solder on the bottom of the wire, but also on the top of the wire. So solder is going to cover up the top of the wire, going from all the way from here to the top and to the other end. So we give more secure connection. So we have solder on the top, solder that connects to the outside of the wire, and then to the bottom. So it will give a more secure connection than if you just have solder on just the bottom. Right, now I can do the rest of the pack. Hold it down, move from side to side, make sure it covers the whole thing. There we go. Not just the wire, but also outside of the wire. So the wire is like being sandwiched between the top and the bottom, covered with solder. There we go. That's it. I got the top done. Now the bottom part. Now the bottom part is a bit harder to solder than the top because it's the entire case of the battery. So it acts as a heat sink and it draws the heat away from your soldering tip when you're trying to apply heat to it. So make sure you have plenty of solder, but not too much. That should be enough for me. So I want to make sure it's bigger than my wire so that the solder can flow and cover it. There we go. Alright, put some solder on. You see that it's a bit harder to apply the solder on. See there, my soldering tip is big, so I put it flat to the surface to heat it up as much as I can, you know, spend as little time as I can. There we go, that's a nice piece right there. That's a nice one right there. Alright, time to solder the wire. A little bit on here, a little bit on this side, just to hold it down. It's like tagging, okay? Now I can really solder. Let's do the one on in the middle first. Right. Want to make sure solder flow from all the way from this side through up the wire and through the other side. There we go. Beautiful. Very secure connection. So there you have it, just a few tips on how to solder these batteries together. Sure, you can buy a spot welding machine, but not everybody can shell out a few $100 for those. Plus, when you solder these batteries together like this, if one of the cells fails, it's very easy for you to desolder and remove the cell and replace it with another cell. It's very easy to desolder than welding. Alright, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.